So, what's the real difference between a good company and a great one? Well, it's not just about the product they sell, it's the people. And the secret to unlocking all that human potential, it's something that honestly gets overlooked all the time: training. So, in this explainer, we're going to decode the blueprint for how the best companies turn raw talent into truly world-class performance. Okay, so how does that transformation actually happen? Think about it like this. Picture a pro sports team. You can have the most gifted athletes on the planet, but if there's no coaching, no practice, no real game plan, they're never going to win a championship. It's just not going to happen. Well, corporate training is that coaching. It's the disciplined, systematic work that keeps a team sharp, keeps them adaptive, and makes sure they're always ready to compete. All right, so let's be super clear about what we mean when we say training. We're not talking about a couple of mandatory workshops you have to sit through or, those boring videos. No, real training is a systematic process. It's all about deliberately, purposefully improving the knowledge, the skills, and the core competencies of your team so they can just flat out perform better. The goal here isn't to just check a box, it's to actually fuel success for the individual and for the whole organization. So that brings us to section 1. Why does training actually matter? In a world of tight budgets and even tighter deadlines, why should anyone make this a priority? Let's break it down.
Here's the thing. Training isn't just a nice-to-have perk anymore. It is a core strategic move. I mean, think about it. Technology is constantly changing, markets are shifting under our feet, and skills that were super valuable yesterday might be totally obsolete tomorrow. So investing in your people, that's really the only way you can build a competitive edge that lasts. It's how you close those critical skill gaps before they turn into huge problems, and it's how you build a culture where new ideas and innovation can actually happen.
And you can see how all these objectives are connected, right? It's like a domino effect. You start by enhancing skills and knowledge, which pretty obviously leads to better job performance. But it goes way deeper than that. When your team sees the company investing in them, it boosts their motivation and engagement like crazy. It shows them there's a real path for career growth, and that makes them more adaptable, and, maybe most importantly, it makes them want to stick around. It creates this awesome, powerful cycle of growth for everybody involved.
Okay, so if training is that important, you definitely can't just wing it. Which brings us to our second section, designing a winning program. How do you actually build something that works? Let's get into the blueprint.
The best training doesn't just appear out of thin air. It's not a flash of inspiration, it's engineered. And the process is actually a pretty straightforward 4-step loop. First, you have to do a needs analysis. That's the diagnosis part, when you figure out what the real problem is. From there, you move into planning, then implementation, and finally, and this is so important, evaluation, to see if it actually worked. We're going to dig into that first step, because honestly, that's where most training programs fall apart right from the start.
So here's the secret to getting that diagnosis right. See, what most companies do is they see a problem and just throw some generic, one-size-fits-all training at it. And spoiler alert, that almost never works. The smart way to do it is to look at the problem from 3 different levels. First, you've got the organizational level, the 30,000-foot view. You're asking, where does the company as a whole need training? Then you zoom into the task level. What specific jobs or tasks need to be performed better? And finally, you get down to the individual level. Who specifically needs this training, and what skills are they missing? This is how you stop guessing and start targeting your efforts where they'll actually make a difference.
Once you have that clear diagnosis, you need an equally clear target. And that is where SMART objectives are an absolute game changer. This framework takes a vague wish, something like, we need to improve communication, and turns it into a real, concrete plan. By making your goal specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, you give yourself a finish line. It's the only way you'll ever know for sure if the training was a success or not.
All right, section 3, the modern training toolkit. We've got our diagnosis, we've got our target. Now, for the fun part, how do we actually do it? Let's open up the toolkit and see what we've got.
When it comes to actually delivering the training, it really boils down to a choice of environment. Are we talking on the job or off the job? On-the-job training is basically learning by doing. It's stuff like mentoring, where it's immediate, it's directly applicable, and the lessons stick because you're using them right then and there.
But sometimes you just need to get away from the chaos of the workday. That's where off-the-job training, like workshops or seminars, comes in. It lets you focus without distractions. Of course, the real magic usually happens when you find the right blend of the two. So let's talk about a few specific methods, starting with a classic, the case study. This is like doing a deep dive, an analysis of a real-life business situation. It's a fantastic way to build up problem-solving skills because you get to dissect what went right or what went wrong, all in a safe environment. It's basically a workout for your strategic thinking muscle. But of course, some skills just can't be learned by reading a document. I'm talking about things like communication, negotiation, or maybe handling a really tough conversation. For that, you need to practice, and that's where role plays come in. They give you a safe, simulated space to practice those interactions, to build up that confidence and muscle memory for when the stakes are real. Think of it like a practice scrimmage before the big game.
And then, if you want to get even more immersive, you have simulations. I mean, think about how a pilot learns to fly a plane, right? They don't just hop into a 747 on day one, they use a simulator. This method lets people practice really complex, sometimes high-risk tasks, whether it's virtual surgery or managing a crisis, in an environment where there's zero real-world risk. It's about as close as you can get to the real thing. Okay, moving on to section 4, measuring true impact. So let's say you've designed this amazing program. You've delivered it flawlessly. Now comes the million-dollar question. Did it work? How do you know? This brings us to probably the most critical and, sadly, the most often forgotten step.
Now, the gold standard for this is a framework called Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of evaluation. Think of it like climbing a ladder of proof. Level 1 is reaction. Super simple. Did they like it? Did they enjoy the training? Level 2 is learning. Okay, did they actually learn anything? Did they absorb the new information? Level 3 is behavior. And this is where it gets real. Are they actually using the new skills back on the job? And finally, the top of the ladder, level 4, is results. Did all of this actually make a difference to the business? Did it move the needle?
And that brings us to the ultimate metric, because at the end of the day, most business leaders speak one language: return on investment, ROI. This is where you connect your training directly to the bottom line. You take the total cost of the program and you weigh it against the tangible benefits, things like increased revenue, fewer costly errors, better efficiency. When you can show a positive ROI, you've proven that training isn't just an expense on a spreadsheet, it's a powerful investment. Now for our final section, let's look at the future of learning. Because everything we've talked about so far is being put on hyperdrive by technology. The old rules are being rewritten, and learning is becoming more personal, more accessible, and way more powerful than we ever thought possible. One of the biggest shifts we're seeing is the rise of what's called blended learning. It's not about choosing between in-person or e-learning anymore. It's about blending them all together. You take the energy and collaboration of being in a room together, you combine it with the flexibility of online courses, and you add the convenience of learning on your phone. It's about creating a powerful hybrid that meets people wherever they are. But maybe the biggest revolution of all is happening with AI. For so long, training was basically a one-way street. One static, one-size-fits-all course for everybody. AI completely flips that script. It acts like a personal tutor for every single employee. It can create an adaptive learning path that gets easier or harder in real time based on how they're doing. It can recommend the exact piece of content they need to see next. It is pretty much the end of one-size-fits-all learning. And AI is just one part of this bigger picture. We're seeing so many other cool trends. There's micro-learning, these short, super focused videos or modules you can access on the go. There's gamification, which uses game mechanics to make learning more fun and engaging. And of course, the what we're learning is changing, with a huge focus on upskilling for the world of AI and automation, and even thinking about how to do it all more sustainably. So when you pull it all together, all the technology, all the new methods, this pace of constant change, it leads to one final, pretty big question. As technology continues to reshape our jobs in ways we can't even predict, maybe the single most important skill we can have isn't one specific thing like coding or marketing, but just the ability to learn itself. Something to think about. That's it for this explainer. Thanks for tuning in.